Welcome to Section 5 on safety. This section will cover archery safety, range rules, range commands, and equipment safety. Archery proves to be one of the safest sports. In a study conducted by the Archery Trade Association, data was collected from the National Electronic Injury Surveillance System to see how safe archery was compared to other common sports, such as basketball, baseball, or soccer. As seen here, archery has one of the lowest injury rates. Here you can see the raw data from the study. Again, archery has one of the lowest injury rates. To see the full publication, click this link here. Or you can download it using the paperclip button at the bottom of the screen. Archery continues to be a safe sport because rules and protocols are in place that keep everyone safe. Thus, it is important to always incorporate safety into all of your lessons and that they are always enforced. Not only does this create a safe environment for your students, but it also teaches them to be disciplined. On this note, also remember that all of your demonstrations should follow the safety rules. For example, when showing how to use the bow and arrow, make sure you are always keeping it pointed downrange even as you show the different parts. Or, when first walking students through the shot cycle, have them line up on the waiting line so that you can more easily demonstrate and check on students without crossing the shooting line. You never want to cross the shooting line when students are practicing their shot, even with the stretch band, as this would break the safety rules. Talking about teaching, your method has a large impact upon safety as well. Not only is a good teaching method effective for archery skills, but is also important for practicing safety and developing good habits. Before even shooting a bow, students should have learned and practiced the shot through demonstrations, training aids, and drills. There should also be plenty of opportunities to practice safety, like doing the range commands with stretch bands. Just like any other activity, it is important for students to arrive at your class ready to learn and practice. If there are students who are disrupting class or not following safety rules, then you should talk with them and dismiss them from the class if they persist. Lastly, remember that safety is everyone's responsibility. As the instructor, you of course are responsible for the class. However, students too should always be helping to make sure everyone is being safe. Now we are going to go through range rules. It is a good idea to make a big poster of these to display at your range. First, know and obey all range commands. Next, always keep your arrows pointed downrange and towards the target. Also, shoot only your target and no high draws. A high draw is when you draw back with the bow pointed too far up. If you use proper shooting technique, then there is no need to draw at that angle. Always check to see that no one is downrange or behind the targets when shooting. Always walk at the archery range, no running at any time. Horseplay will not be tolerated. And keep your arrows in your quiver until you are instructed to shoot. Always wear your arm guard and finger tab when shooting. If you drop or misfire an arrow when on the shooting line, leave it on the ground until you are told to get your arrows or the instructor retrieves it for you. Only use the arrows the instructor gave you. Remember what they look like. Finally, keep your bow vertical when carrying it and when on the shooting line. When giving these rules to your students, it is easy for it to turn into a lecture and for students to not pay attention. Therefore, try and keep it engaging by asking your students questions. For example, what do you think are good range rules? Should I run or walk on the range? After they give their answers, you can fill in the gaps. Another thing to keep in mind about giving rules is to stay positive wherever possible. Instead of saying, "Don't run," say, "Please walk." True or false? Students should always walk on the archery range. That is correct. Students should always walk on the archery range. True or false? Students may shoot diagonally at targets other than their own. Good choice. Students should only shoot at the target that was assigned to them. Please select all that are true. Those are correct. Now we are going to learn the range commands. Range commands are used to run the archery range. They tell archers where to be and when to do what. It is also a good idea to print these as a poster or handout for the students. There are two types of range commands, whistle and verbal. We will first go over whistle commands. First, students should start behind the waiting line with arrows in their quiver. After checking that the range is clear, you can give 2 whistles, which mean the archers may go up to the shooting line. They should do their stance and still keep their arrows in the quiver. 1 whistle means they may begin shooting. After an archer finishes shooting, they should return back behind the waiting line. When everyone is done and behind the waiting line, 3 whistles mean the archers may walk and collect their arrows. They should stop at the target line and wait for the instructor to say it is okay to pull arrows from their target. After collecting their arrows, they should put them back into their quivers and walk back behind the waiting line. Lastly, 5 or more whistles means to stop shooting, put your arrows back in your quiver. This is used for emergencies. Note that whistle commands will be heard at any official tournament, so students should be familiar with these. Now let's go through verbal commands. When using verbal commands, make sure everyone can hear. Clear, archers to the shooting line, means archers may go up to the shooting line. They should keep their arrows in their quiver. Begin shooting means they may start shooting. Again, when they are done, they should go back behind the waiting line. Clear, walk forward and get your arrows means they may walk to the target line and then pull their arrows when the instructor says to. Stop shooting, put your arrows in your quiver should be used in emergencies. It is helpful to use both whistle and verbal commands together. The whistle commands ensure that everyone hears them, and the verbal commands remind the students of their meaning. Range commands are an important way to enforce safety. Before giving any of the commands, you should be checking that it is safe to proceed. First, check that all students are behind the waiting line and that the range is clear. Then you can blow 2 whistles to let the students come up to the shooting line. Then check that all students have made their stance and are keeping their arrows in their quivers. If they pull out their arrows too soon, tell them to put it back in their quiver until they hear the 1 whistle. Then you may blow 1 whistle for them to start shooting. Once they are done, you need to check that the shooting line is empty and that all students are back behind the waiting line. After that, you can blow 3 whistles to have them retrieve their arrows. Check that all students pause at the target line until you say to proceed, and then make sure that they are pulling their arrows properly. Finally, they should all return back behind the waiting line. By enforcing these procedures, you teach students to be disciplined. Let's see all this in action now. First, the students should get their assigned equipment. Then they line up behind the waiting line at their assigned target. After 2 whistles, they may come up to the shooting line to do their stance. Check that all arrows are still in their quivers. 1 whistle and they may begin shooting. As they finish, students should go back behind the waiting line and put their bows back on the rack. Once they are all done and behind the waiting line, blow 3 whistle blasts. Students may then walk up and wait at the target line until the instructor says to collect their arrows. After retrieving their arrows, they should put them into their quiver and then walk back to the waiting line. True or false? Students must pause at the target line before retrieving their arrows. That's true. Students must pause at the target line before retrieving their arrows. Drag the command on the right to its meaning on the left. Good choices. True or false? Students may take their arrows out of their quiver before 1 whistle is blown. Good choice. Arrows must stay in the quiver until after 1 whistle has been blown. Now we are going to look at equipment safety. First of all, archers should dress appropriately. Closed-toed shoes are required at archery ranges. Students should also refrain from wearing baggy clothes that might get caught in string. This includes jackets, sweatshirts, or very loose shirts. Dangling earrings should not be worn, and long hair should be tied back. These precautions are all to ensure that nothing will get caught by the string while shooting. When setting up your equipment, always check that it is in good condition. This includes checking for frayed strings, limb cracks, the limb bolts are secured, good arrow nocks and arrow shafts, good arrow rests, and that the mat sits properly on the stand. Lastly, the equipment should be selected and used properly. Students should always wear their arm guard and finger tab. Make sure you are giving the proper tab to students, either left or right-handed, as well as the correct size. Archers should only use the bow and arrows assigned to them. As the instructor, you need to assign the proper bow and arrow length to students. When using the equipment, students should remember to not dry fire the bows. A dry fire is when an archer draws the bow without an arrow and releases the string. This is very bad for the bow. Lastly, students should be following all 4 steps to pulling arrows properly. Again, the 4 steps to properly pulling out arrows is to first put one hand on the bail near the base of the arrow. The other hand then grabs the base of the arrow. Next, and most importantly, check behind that it is clear. Finally, pull out the arrow slowly. Fill in the blanks to complete the statement correctly. Well done, those are correct. True or false? Students are allowed to practice their shot by releasing the string at full draw without an arrow, which is known as a dry fire. Good choice. Dry fires are not allowed because they damage the bows. After checking that all of your arrows are in good condition, what is the most important consideration when assigning arrows to students? Correct. You must choose the proper arrow length for students. Click here to proceed to Section 6, Basic Shooting Technique.